I'm going to start off with something that will make some people uncomfortable. What if I told you that some people haven't touched a drug or an alcohol in years? 5, 10, 15 years. And guess what? They're still relapsing. They are still relapsing. Not on heroin, not into alcohol, not on fentanyl, right? Not on the substance, but into fear, into anger, into victimhood, into self-sabotage, into toxic relationships, self-doubt, excuses, into the very mindset that they've been trying to escape their entire lives. Because relapse isn't always about substances. Sometimes relapse is returning to an old version of yourself after you've already been shown a better way. And if we're honest, that's a battle every single one of us has fought and are still fighting. Not just people in addiction recovery. Everybody. The businessman who knows he should lead better. The father who knows he should be more present. The mother who knows she deserves healthier relationships. The person trying to lose weight. The person trying to start over. The person trying to forgive. The person that's trying to grow. Every single one of us has stood at a crossroads between who we were and who we're becoming. And the question isn't, can I change? The real question is, can I stay committed when change becomes uncomfortable? Welcome back to True Healing and Recovery with your boy, Coach Mike Roro, where chains break, minds wake, and purpose takes its rightful place. Today, we're talking about a different kind of relapse, folks. The relapse that never shows up on a drug screening. Nope. The relapse that happens in the mind. The relapse that happens in your habits. The relapse that happens in your identity. Because some people break free from substances, but they remain trapped by their thinking. And if we don't address that, we're going to spend our lives changing behaviors while never changing ourselves. So let's talk about why people go back to what hurts them. I will continue to be honest. Lived experience right here. We've all done it. We've all done this. We've all gone back to relationships that we knew weren't healthy. We've gone back to habits that we knew were destructive. We've gone back to attitudes that hurt us. Gone back to environments that just drained us so much. And afterwards, after it all, we ask, why do I keep doing this? The answer is deeper than most people realize. The human brain loves familiarity. Excuse me. It does. It loves running back to the familiar things, folks. Even when the familiar things hurt. The brain doesn't automatically choose what's best. The brain often chooses what it's familiar with. And that's why people stay in toxic relationships. That's why some people stay trapped in destructive patterns. That's why some people remain stuck in the same cycle year after year, because familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar growth. Lived experience. You know what's scary? You know what's scary? Most people don't fear failure. Most people fear the unknown. Think about that for a second. Some people would rather stay miserable in a situation they understand. Then they risk stepping out into a future that they don't. At least misery is predictable, right? See, growth requires faith. Healing requires uncertainty. Transformation requires courage. See, the cage becomes comfortable when you've lived inside of that cage long enough. And eventually, freedom feels scary. Come on. Let's dive deeper. Can we go deeper on this? Because the biggest relapse doesn't happen in behavior, folks. It happens in identity. See, you could quit drinking and still think like a defeated person. You can stop using drugs and still believe you're broken. You could lose weight and still see yourself as unhealthy. You can become successful and still feel unworthy. Why? Because behavior changes faster than identity. Many people stop the habit. Few people challenge the belief. Mhm. Can I ask you guys something? Let me ask you this. Who are you when nobody's watching? Not who you post online, not who people think you are, not who you pretend to be. Who do you believe that you are? Because the answer to that question determines almost everything. You cannot consistently outperform the identity that you secretly believe about yourself. You can't. If you believe you're a failure, you'll eventually find ways to fail. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll eventually reject opportunities. If you believe that you're broken, you'll eventually sabotage healing. The mind is always working to prove itself right. Let, uh, let's get example. A man gets sober, gets a really good job, starts rebuilding relationships, ultimately starts feeling really better. And then suddenly he starts missing appointments. He stops answering the phone calls, begins isolating himself. Not because he wants to fail, because success is challenging the identity that he's carried for years. See, deep down, he still believes, yo, I'm a screw up. I'm an addict. I'm the problem. And until identity changes, behavior often follows old beliefs. See, this is the fear of success. Here's something that most people never talk about. Sometimes success scares people more than failure. Because, again, failure is familiar. See, success creates responsibility. Success creates visibility. Success creates expectations. Success forces you to become someone new. What if your biggest obstacle isn't fear of failure? What if your biggest obstacle is fear of becoming the person that you're capable of being? Think about that. Because becoming healthy means responsibility, right? Becoming successful means accountability. Becoming healed means no longer having excuses. And some people would rather stay stuck than face that reality. Imagine someone standing at the edge of breakthrough. They're finally getting healthy, finally getting their finances together, finally building confidence, finally stepping into leadership. And then suddenly they quit. Not because they couldn't do it, because they got scared. Scared of success, scared of expectations, scared of maintaining what they've built, scared of becoming visible. Self-sabotage often shows up right before breakthrough, folks. Let's talk about something controversial. You know, Coach Mike always got something controversial to say, right? And and before I say it, before I say it, hear me out, hear my heart, man. I need you to understand trauma is real. I've experienced some trauma. It's real. Abuse is real. Neglect, poverty, right? Racism, addiction, pain, all of this stuff is real, folks. So please don't think I'm dismissing anything. We're not minimizing any of those things. But healing requires something powerful. And what is that? Responsibility. Not 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 responsibility for what happened to you. Responsibility for what happens next. Because there comes a point where healing asks the question, what are you going to do now? It doesn't ask, what happened? But it's asking you, now, what are we doing now? You could spend years explaining why you're hurting. Or you can spend the next year, a few years healing. Right? You explaining why you're hurting, what does that create? Sympathy. But you spend the next few years healing, that creates freedom. Man, listen, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Your trauma may explain your behavior. It does not have to define your future. Doesn't. Now, let's get practical, okay? Master life coach kicking in. Let's get practical. Let's get practical because motivation is wonderful. Motivation is wonderful. But systems create change. Feelings come and go. Systems remain. So I want you to grab your pen and paper. I want you to grab the notes section, go to the notes section in your telephone. I just want to share what I believe, especially in my own lived experience, the 6 pillars that will help cause true healing growth. For me, first pillar is my mindset, your mindset, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to keep this simple and practical. Mindset is the number one thing. What do you tell yourself every day? What do you tell yourself every day about who you are? So the number one pillar is mindset. Number 2, the second pillar, I hope you're writing this down, is relationships. Relationships, folks. Here's the question that comes along with that. Who has access to your life? Third pillar. Number 3, boundaries. Question that goes along with that is this: what are you allowing? Fourth pillar, purpose. Purpose. Why do you get up every morning? Purpose. And number 5, faith. Faith. What anchors you when life gets difficult? And then the 6th and final pillar is discipline. That's right, discipline. What habits support your future? I'm going to repeat the pillars, right? First pillar, mindset. Second pillar, relationships. Third pillar, boundaries. Fourth, purpose. 5, faith. And 6 is discipline. Guys, many people want a different life, but they keep protecting the habits that created the current one. You can't build a new future while defending old behaviors. At some point, something has to change. We know the cliche, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're listening and you're tired. You're tired of starting over. You're tired of making promises to yourself. You're tired of feeling stuck. Tired of fighting the same battles. I understand. But hear me out and understand this. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. And you're definitely not finished. And you're not too far broken, too far gone. The fact that you're listening right now means something inside of you still believes change is possible. And I agree, because it is. Not because life is easy, not because growth is comfortable, not because healing happens overnight, but because human beings are capable of extraordinary transformations when they decide they are no longer willing to settle for less than they were created to become. 1 year from now, you'll either be living with the consciousness of today's excuses. Excuse me. I didn't mean consciousness. Consequences. Excuse me. Let me scratch that. Let's start all over. 1 year from now, You'll either be living with the consequences of today's excuses or enjoying the benefits of today's decisions. The choice belongs to you. Let that sink in, folks. You already know, guys. You already know where you're at. This is True Healing and Recovery with Coach Mikey Rowe, where chains break, minds wake, and purpose takes its rightful place. Do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and keep showing up, keep growing, keep healing, and keep fighting. Because the old version of you may be familiar, but the future version of you is waiting. And that future is worth the fight. And don't forget, another day is another blessing. Peace.